Okay. Everyone, I'll let you go ahead and approve the recording. Welcome to our special meeting, February 28th. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 2:03. This is a virtual meeting that's being recorded and will be posted in just a few days. So I'm going to move on to emergent changes to the agenda. The recommendation is that the February 28th, 2022 special board meeting agenda be approved by the Board of Trustees. Unless there is any amendments to be made, we'll go ahead. Can I get someone to make that motion? Okay, Trustee Yagos, thank you. And then is there anyone who has any emergent changes that they'd like to make note of or? No? Okay, so all in favor? Perfect, that's passed. Okay, we'll move on to C, declaring the declaration of conflict of interest. This is that the Board of Trustees declare if they have any conflict of interest relating to agenda items from the February 28th, 2022 special board meeting. And if so, please declare them now. Okay, I'm seeing none, so we don't have anyone declaring that. Okay, so we're going to move on to item D, our action item. D1, Crow's Nest Path. So I try not to have this right. So I'm looking off to the side. Okay, in response to the February 14th, 2022 board motion, quote, that the Board of Trustees approve a virtual meeting on February 28th, 2022 to have a second and third reading of the Crow's Nest Pass facility proposal, end quote. Mr. Jeff Perry, Associate Superintendent, Business Services, will continue to discuss the proposal on the addition of a cost-effective facility that will support all LRSD place-based programs now and in the future. The recommendation is that the Board of Trustees approve the second and third reading of the Crow's Nest Pass facility proposal as presented. Can I get someone to please make that motion? We'll go with Trustee Hodges. Sorry, Trustee Long. You just weren't quite as quick. So with that, I'm gonna just turn it over to Mr. Perry. We'll let him do his presentation. If you have questions, I'll be watching, so please raise your hand in front of your screen or use your little hand function. And then if we don't get to questions that you may have had, please make a note of them. And at the end of the presentation, we'll be able to ask questions as well. But if you have them throughout, please raise your hand and we can pause and address them right away. Thanks, Mr. Perry. I'll turn it to you.
Great, thanks, Madam Chair. I will share my screen with you as I have a similar proposal to the last time, but with a few answers to some questions. So let me just do that real quickly here. And share. Madam Chair, can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see that?
I don't know where my thumbs up button is, but I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Great, thank you. Okay, so the first thing I thought we would do is just kind of a review, and you've kind of gone through that a little bit in the lead into the agenda item. The first thing is that the proposal was formally presented to the board on February 14th, 2022. At that time, a concept of the potential facility was presented by Ferrari Westwood Babick Architects, FWBA, by David, who was a principal of the FWBA Architects. The Board of Trustees gave first reading, obviously you know that, and today we're revisiting the facility proposal for the second and third reading to approve the proposal presented or give consideration to it. So I just wanted to give you, just as a review, and especially given that there's time has elapsed since the 14th, I'll just give you, these are the two slides that were specifically on the proposal that was presented on the 14th, and they haven't been altered. The slides after this is additional information to answer some of the questions that were presented to management in regards to the proposal. So I'll just go through these real quick. The proposal is being presented to the board for consideration. The addition of a cost-effective facility on the Crow's Nest Pass site that will support the 2022 FACES summer program and other outdoor pursuit programs starting in the fall of 2022. So as discussed in the last meeting, the property was used for an accommodated or a slightly different FACES program last summer of 2021. And the 2-day sessions is what they had last year in regards to the program. Was able to be accommodated in the facility, although even then it was tight, but no concurrent sessions were able to had at that time. Key components of the facility that we discussed, so key principles and components are, you know, the effects of having an additional site that has the flexibility in the spacing for instruction, enhances the place-based experience for students and staff, fits in the environment, doesn't take away from the outdoor feel, fits within the division's 2021-2022 budget, which the board has approved already, and currently would access the available funds within that budget. Can be used throughout the year for all LRSD programming, FACES, FNMI, Pursuits program, and also some revenue generating functions as we are able to. So further detail was that we talked about the process that would be used for tendering the project, construction management, where we would have a contractor join the team in continuing the design of the facility and provide feedback input with regards to what's affordable, what best practices, any alterations for the concept that we looked at that would best meet our needs and our timeline. And again, this process was selected given the short time frame that we have in order to provide a usable facility for the 2022 FACES program, which is pretty important to the jurisdiction. The funding, for your information, was and for consideration is the majority of the funding would come from the disposal of the property, surplus property in the town of Fort Macleod. Additional funding would come from deferred or surplus areas within the budget for areas that utilize the facility, international program, deferred FNMI funds, deferred summer school funding, and more or less to identify that we would not be reducing current year programming that's ongoing to accommodate this project. It would come from sources where there's funds available. So in that, I'm just going to jump ahead on my documents here. We received quite a few questions in relation to the proposal. So I'll do my best to answer the questions that we can. Some of the questions are related to details that I just don't have, and I'll identify where that might be as we go through. Others are in relation to ongoing programming and programming that might access the site. This type of information has been shared in the past and potentially with the former board prior to this new board in the new term. Many of these are individual items that could take 30 to 45 minutes a piece when you're talking about the types of FNMI programming, the types of pursuits programming and things like that, and it would be appropriate to have those individuals come and speak to them. So won't get into a ton of detail in that, but certainly will respond to any questions that are pertinent at the time. So the first additional information I'm going
Mr.
to,
Murphy?
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, it's just Lacey. I don't know if you can see me right now, but when you say that they've been presented to the board, some of these other programs may have been presented to the board in the past. All the programs that will be happening there for sure and are solid, we've discussed. Is that right? Like that we, in my recollection, I'm recalling that we've discussed different potential ideas, but we haven't approved, or like there's not any programs that are coming up that are going to be happening on the site that we know of for sure that we haven't discussed as a new board.
Right, and that doesn't limit it to having other types of programs that would, or that would be held on site. But for the most part, the programming has been in place. And again, if we use the FNMI for example,
Yes.
there's a lot of planning that's gone in that takes significant time to identify the types of programming on the land, programming and things of that nature. That's a whole nother discussion of its own, but those things have been presented by our FNMI coordinator when we had one last year, as well as Mr. Feller as well at times. And so it's not new. It may be new to some of the trustees that are new to the board, right? But it would be challenging to discuss all of the different types of programming that we would have on here in one special board meeting, you know, in order to make the decision of whether the facility would be approved or not. Those really need their own time and the appropriate people to come and present to them on that information. Yeah, sorry, that might have been a little further than you asked.
Yeah, that's okay. So sorry, I'm unmuted just for a minute, but I'll mute again. I see that Mr. Feller has his hand raised, maybe in response to that, and then also Trustee Long. So Mr. Feller, if we want to go to you, and then Trustee Long will go to you.
I'm sorry, I don't think I put my hand up, but I will sit back down and keep my hand down. Thank you.
Okay, that could have been me just pretending you had it up. Okay, go ahead, Trustee Long.
Yeah, certainly, as Mr. Perry points out, that would be a whole nother meeting, but it might be appropriate, since this is a second and third reading and an extremely important meeting, that Mr. Feller and Mr. Cusack could certainly, off the top of their head, give us a list of many of the programs that are already planned for this facility. That wouldn't take very long. I mean, just off the top of their head, we're going to do this, 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 and this. 10 minutes if the other trustees are in favor of that.
Yeah, and we can do that as we get to it in my presentation. We'll turn that over to them if that's appropriate.
Yeah, sounds great. So let's continue with the presentation, and then when we do talk about programming, we can talk about what programming is for sure happening. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't programming that had been approved and will be happening that the new trustees weren't aware of. So I think most of it's still in the planning stages. So we'll continue. And then, as Trustee Long said, when it's appropriate, we can just hear some of those things that are for sure happening out there. So we'll let you continue. Just sorry, one sec, Mr. Perry, I'm just scrolling to make sure there's no other hands up. Okay, please go ahead.
All right, so one of the first I thought we would discuss, one of the questions that came forward was, does this proposal align with our mission, vision, and core values? And so I put up on this slide what our mission is. LRSD inspires excellence through meaningful relationships, innovation, and collaboration. And the vision is every student, every day. And so I'll go through some of these points, but I mean, even other of the senior management, if they want to speak up in this area, or even other trustees who are familiar with you know, the programs that we've offered in the past and that we continue to offer. So it's no secret that this project is being put in place for the most part to accommodate the summer of 2022 FACES program, which is a program that we've had for over 20 years. And as Rick Bullock mentioned at the last board meeting, when you heard from Rick and Joelle on the FACES program, there's a really unique relationship between the FACES Corporation and the Livingston Range School Division, to the point where we're providing a program that is very rare and not in very many other locations, even outside of Alberta, but for sure inside of Alberta. So I just put in this point together. We have built one of the most inspiring, innovative, and impactful programs offered to students in the province of Alberta. And LRSD students have first access to that. And so program has and continues to be open to every LRSD grade 9 student who chooses to attend. And recently the program has been expanded, and you heard about this last meeting, to allow students in grades 10 to 12 potentially to continue to attend the program as they see fit. LRSD continues to add additional programs that meet these same standards, and the feedback from stakeholders, especially in the programs that have been in place for a long time, specifically the FACES program, is overwhelmingly supportive of these programs. And so when I look at whether, you know, the adding of a resource to support the programs that have been in place for quite some time, albeit held in other locations, it certainly hits the key components of inspiring excellence, building relationships, being innovative and collaborative, and is available to every student in those grades that are in LRSD. So maybe I'll pause every time I get to the end of a slide in case someone else wants to add comments or ask questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. Right now, I don't see anyone with their hand raised. Give me 1 sec to make sure. I'm scrolling through everyone here. Okay. Looks like we are good.
Good to go? Okay.
Yeah.
So in line with that, the follow-up question was, does this align with our core values? And so the proposed facility is needed to support the immediate needs of the FACES program for the summer of 2022 and will benefit other programs in the fall. The ability to maintain an impactful program requires we put in place key resources to deliver those programs. And this proposed facility is a key resource now and in the future for the FACES program, as well as other programs that we offer. When you look at the program, do these programs that will be supported by this proposal align with divisional core values? You know, the FACES program itself is student-centered. Leadership is an attribute that's developed at these programs. Integrity is a huge part of the FACES program. Wellness, being out in the outdoors, but not only that, the wellness that comes from the actual programming itself. And I think Rick and Joelle spoke to that really well at the February 14th meeting. And it entirely fits in with the core of place-based, or the core value of place-based, which is taking advantage of the land and the resources that we have to provide meaningful programs. So the answer to that is overwhelmingly yes, and I'm sure none of you disagree with that, but and already know that from your experience personally or from what you've heard from stakeholders. But again, I'll pause. I guess the biggest point on this is the need for resources to be able to continue to offer those meaningful programs. If we don't have a resource such as the facility that we're proposing, it would be impossible to provide concurrent sessions. And that's one of the things that we want to put through as many students as possible. We want this to impact as many people as possible. And concurrent sessions is only possible if we have the resources. We talked about a little bit and about temporary infrastructure. We talked about the wind. We talked about the elements, and that would be really challenging to do that. And so that's why this proposal has come to the board. So I'll just again pause and let anyone ask questions if they have any, or even comments.
Okay, I'm just scrolling through here.
Lori has one.
Oh, she was on my first page. I missed her. Okay, go ahead, Trustee Hodges, and let me mute myself quick first, and then I'll just scroll through quick to see if anyone else. Go ahead.
Not so much a question, but just kind of a comment. I think it reflects everything that you have just said to Mr. Perry in the letter that the minister sent us, and pointing out that we have this unique summer program unlike any other in this division, and that she's personally seen it herself, and that this is just such a great opportunity for all students, as you pointed out. So even the minister realizes what a great opportunity FACES is for Livingston Range.
No, thank you. We haven't even talked about that letter. I'm sure we will at some point. It's exciting news, but thanks. I do agree that not only the minister, other individuals within Alberta education have seen firsthand the impact of the FACES program, and it's undeniably impactful for not only the students, but the parents that attended as well, you know, the closing session and so forth. So, but again, I think that's fairly known to all of you, so.
Yeah. Jeff, I don't see any other hands, but I did just want to say, in seeing this, we're talking a lot about FACES and the FACES program, but the motion that we're talking about is specifically about building this building. Should we approve it? And when I look at this, and when I was thinking about this, like, does it go with our mission, vision, and core values? You know, if I'm not talking about FACES, but I'm talking about the building and the purpose of the building, again, all these reasons are the same, right? Is it student-centered? We're building it so that more students can come and experience that, even if it means like in the winter or whatever. We have students who are coming, like a grade 6 group of kids who are coming to do a grade 6 camp, or they're just coming for the day to snowshoe or something. Being able to have this building or this facility where they don't have to go in, it's not like, okay, we need to make sure someone cleans the carpets after, all these things, but it's just like, almost like you said, kind of like a picnic shelter or whatever. It's going to allow more students to come, overlapping with each other, and it's right on our land. And I mean our land by, it's in our division, it's in the local area of where these kids are being raised. So it is very place-based. We're encouraging wellness by having this building so that outdoor programs that we want to have happen, or like day visits, like snowshoeing, things like that, we're now creating a space where we know our kids can go and do those things from out the entire division. They can book it and go there, and multiple groups can be there at the same time. So it is wellness. It is, you know, creating all these things. So not just through the FACES program. I think we all know and love the FACES program, but when I'm thinking at it in terms of the motion and can I approve building this building? Does building this building support our mission, vision, and core values? Aside from the fact that it supports FACES, it does support those, in my opinion, in other ways as well. So I just wanted to add that because I'm very focused on the motion right now, and I love FACES. I think it's amazing. FACES is a huge part of why it's being built and why we're trying, why it's being proposed to us. But there's other ways to, aside from the FACES program, that this aligns with our mission, vision, core values, in my opinion. So I'll just leave it there, but also I see Trustee Long has his hand up.
Trustee Poitras brings up a very good point, and it's really important to emphasize it, that if you're students in the Calgary area, you're using the facilities at Kananaskis Park during the winter for cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, and other adventures. And this is an opportunity for the South and everybody in Southern Alberta, from Nanton South, BC to Saskatchewan border, to have a facility to go to for winter excursions. For everybody, every student, it's an incredible opportunity. And you don't need it to be heated, as Mr. Cusack would tell you. I personally took students winter camping for probably 25 years. Never did we ever in the wintertime have anything that was heated or even close to this facility. We slept in camp kitchens and we had a wonderful, wonderful time. This is such an incredible opportunity. And yes, it's more than just for the summer, and it's more than just for one local or for the LRSD. It's an incredible opportunity.
Thank you, Trustee Long. Mr. Perry, if you just give me 1 second to see.
Yep.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. If you don't either, you can respond to those comments if you want to, or just let them stand and we can continue.
No, I think you both articulated it very well, and so thanks for adding to that. Okay, I'll jump to the next question. Is this proposal fiscally responsible? And of course, we as an administration team believe it is. not that we would ever bring something to the board that we felt was not fiscally responsible. The proposal allows the board to live within the budget that was approved by the board in 2021-22 school year. So we're not seeking to go outside of something that the board has already approved. We're seeking to find the resources within the budget to be able to accommodate the proposal, the project. Other than the use of proceeds from the sale of the surplus lands that we anticipate we won't be using in the town of Fort McLeod. So that is the one exception to that. The proposal looks to use funds that are not spent in the current year. If not spent in the current year, would be required to pay back to the original source of the funder. The use of proposed sources of funding are justified in that the facility will support programming in those areas. In addition, we're looking at a cost-effective project that typically will have no significant operational costs with regards to mechanical and things of that nature. So as close to net zero as we could possibly do. We're also looking into grants in relation to this as well, but of course those take time. So it may be that we don't even have to use the resources of the jurisdiction, but that's not something that's official at this point. And so we are looking to use resources within the budget that has already been approved. So again, I'll pause, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm just going to give everyone a second here. See if I see any hands raised when we're talking about fiscal responsibility. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so go ahead and continue.
Okay, does administration have any concerns with the project? The only concern that we have right now is time. Time is of the essence, right? There's some things that we don't control in the project, and the province is experiencing those around the province. So, fabrication of certain components, the shipping, taking extended time to get certain things. We won't really know the extent of that until we are meeting with the architects and the contractor to identify what the lead time is for some of those things. Some of the adjustments we've made to the proposal, and this was before it even came to the board, was looking at components that could be prefabricated and brought to the site already created. So talking about the breakout rooms, the cement foundation as well as walls can typically be done at the same time, and so you're not looking at a ton of trades coming in on and off at the same time. And so again, most of this won't be understood until we are meeting with a contractor who is currently out there doing jobs and projects and giving us information with regards to what our plans are. And so we look forward to, if it goes through, to meeting with them and seeing what that looks like. Okay.
I'm seeing no hands right now.
Okay.
So please continue.
Okay, so another question or suggestion was to give a vision of this property as it pertains to the overall infrastructure on site. And so thought I would give it in kind of the order of the phases that we have been working towards. And this started with the previous board in the previous year, who actually permitted us to acquire the property. So first of all, we looked into the property itself. We entered into a lease. I think I spelled lease wrong there, but I apologize. So lease or license as of June 21st. So we've had this property as of June 21st or June 2021. Used it for phases in the summer, was able to acquire the property at the end of August in 2021. And so at that time, there was a vision of acquiring this property and using it for the phases program as well as future programming that we would put together. Phase 2 is 2 two parts, renovate the current kitchen and media space to up to code in order to include a food prep area. This has always been something that we've identified as being part of what was needed to be done in order to be able to provide the programming. And secondly was to add additional infrastructure to support the programming as well, because we knew that the FACES program specifically, and I know we're not only talking about FACES programming, but the FACES program requires the facilities for the program that we offer, was coming from the Gladstone location. And if we've been there, that site is, I mean, the facility is phenomenal as far as being in the place-based programming. And so this proposal in phase 2 is to add a shelter to support immediate needs for FACES program and the fall programming. Phase 3, again, we identified that this is a work in process, but is to add a multi-storied facility, and we've shared that drawing with the board in the past, but that's something that hasn't been passed through an architect. It's just a sketch on the personal drafting software. And so the concept is currently being developed. And when I say that, we haven't engaged the architects at this point to do that. So we don't have a concept drawn up like we do with this shelter. We've been working towards phase 2 at this point. And phase 3 will come shortly after we complete phase 2, in that we will work with an architect to come up with a concept and look into the what we can put out there. And this facility will address any and all other programming needs. It's an all-inclusive facility that can be flexible enough to accommodate indoor-outdoor programming. And so when we talk about additional things that we need showers for students when they're going to be there for six days. Potentially they need to be able to do those types of things, as well as space that can accommodate international programming coming out and doing things like that. So nonetheless, that is something that we're working towards. Not a lot of time has been spent in that area until we get through phase 2. So I'll leave it there and see if there's any questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, just looking here.
Clara has.
Yeah, Clara's got one. Mr. Perry, you're so quick on the draw. So you're just muted there, Clara. Let me mute myself so we don't get the echo, and then you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It's not really a question. It's just, I just want to point out that when we talk about vision, and I know this, you say this only pertains to the infrastructure, but it hasn't been that long in the past that we sort of looked at this, and this became available to us. And just look in that short period of time, how many programs or areas that we have that has been envisioned that could work with students within this area and things that we can do. So when you're talking about the infrastructure, I mean, this is going to be an ongoing thing that we'll be looking at, because I'm sure in the future, we can also talk about, or we can also look at other programs that can be. It has been, I think we have to leave it flexible, but I think one of the things is that everybody has really given important ideas and visions to what can be done and how we can put all these programs into it. I really think it's very encouraging that this has been done in such a short period of time.
Thank you, Trustee Yagos. We'll go to Trustee Long.
Chairwoman Poitras, is this an appropriate time to discuss one of the questions that was asked by trustees about the structure of the facility, or is that coming up later?
Tell me what question you're referring to.
Snow build up on the roof.
Sure. So we can ask those questions and I'll let Jeff answer that, but I just want to remind everyone, and not remind, but just make sure that we all understand that we are not approving the plans for this building. So we've all seen the picture. Many of us went to the site. We discussed, like, would these doors be great? You know, should we have some sunlight in there? But we could go out and see the building in June, and it could have different doors. It could have no sunroof. It could have, so we're approving that we agree to financially support this. We agree that it's in line with our vision, mission, and values and stuff. But as far as the direction that it's going to face, if it's safe for the snow, like, will the slope be proper, things like that. Once with the direction that it's moving based on what we decided in the first reading, that a contractor will be involved early so that they can be a part of planning the building and the supplies and everything. The building could look very different than the building that we're seeing and discussing in these pictures. There may be a totally different roof. There may be. So that is a kind of base concept that we were shown. This is kind of what we're thinking, not we, but what David is thinking based on what we said we're looking for in this facility. But we are not, like, tied to that. And by we, I mean the division. And so when that goes to the architecture and the contractor and everything, they'll discuss with all of their expertise. We know that these doors are impossible to get right now. Here's another option. What do you guys think? And they'll make a whole new concept. Maybe it'll be very similar, maybe it won't. And then bring it back for approval from admin. So some of those questions, which we can discuss, and I'm sure that Jeff is prepared to answer them as best he can. But some of those questions can't be answered because, like, that building isn't specifically the one that may be built, right? Like, that's outside of our scope. And whether or not the snow will melt and drain properly, that's up to the contractor and the architect to make sure. And if it doesn't, then that would be on them, right? Like, they're the expertise, they're the ones who have their contracting license and all those things. And so it is their job to ensure those things. And that falls under their scope of practice. So that's why we make sure we get someone who we trust and we believe is the best for the job, because we've looked into their credentials and we know they're trained to do those things. So that's just, I just wanted to make sure that we all understand, and that anyone who's watching this later understands that we are approving the use of funds to build this building, and that we support building this building for this purpose, not specifically the building that we're talking about in the picture. So I hope that clarifies everything. Greg,
The reason I bring it up is because all of us as trustees may want to have at least some things answered, have some knowledge before we go to second and third reading.
Well, this is currently second and third reading.
That was a question that was posed earlier.
For sure. So we are at second and third reading right now. We will be voting on this. That was a question that was sent in, and I will definitely turn it over to Jeff to answer. I just wanted to kind of preface, as we move forward in our conversation, I just wanted to preface it with that. But every trustee has the right to ask any question they want. So please, trustees, don't think that I was saying don't ask any of these questions. Ask them. You know, the admins will give, as I talk with my hand so much that it keeps trying to fake raise my hand. Admin will answer to the best of their ability. And if we still have questions after, then we can discuss that at that time. So I'll go ahead and turn it to Mr. Perry to answer that question specifically about the slope of the roof, and the snow is the one that Trustee Long was talking about. And then we'll go to Trustee Stankiewicz, only because she's the one I see next. Okay, that's all I see for right now. So we'll go to Mr. Perry to answer that question, and then Trustee Stankiewicz will go ahead and let you.
I might be able to answer that question better than Mr. Perry. That's why I brought it up.
Well,
okay. Let me just throw two bits in there for a second. Yeah, and there's a lot of things. So I'll just go through this slide because it relates to what you're talking about. Details around the facility itself: size, orientation, capacity, and roof slope. the information that's provided by the board members in relation to those types of things are things that we will take back to the discussions that we have with the architects and the potential contractor, because I'm not an expert in slope of facilities with regards to snow load and things of that nature. So those are the types of questions I can't really ask. And I mean, those are so detailed that we don't know the answers to yet. We only have a concept. And so the fact that the concept brings up potential concerns such as wind and snow and things of that nature, the only thing that we can do now with those is take those and have those discussions with the architects as we move forward if the facility is receives the approval of the second and third reading. So good questions. Not saying they're not good questions, but they're things that I can't answer. And I know, Greg, you indicated that you can, but that's really, like Lacey indicated, that's the architect's responsibility, and the contractor will provide their feedback as well, having worked in Southern Alberta in the past. Getting information from individuals in the Crow's Nest Pass who know the area, I would think would be part of their responsibility as well, if they're unfamiliar with that area. And I think that's a huge part of building something anywhere. You need to understand the landscape, the climate, and so forth. So all we can promise to do at this point with those questions is take that information back to the architect in relation to the size of the facility and things of that nature. We know what it has to provide, and the architects have to identify what the capacity of is the space that they are presenting to us. So we'll have those discussions as well. Again, orientation with regards to wind and things of that nature, that will all be discussed. And again, we're working towards that design of having a footprint that withstands the elements, the snow load, and everything. So yeah, I appreciate the comments and the questions in that area. I can't necessarily answer them from an expertise scenario. So I'll stop there and let Jocelyn speak.
Perfect. Go ahead, Trustee Stanglitz.
Thank you. As Trustee Long was mentioning earlier, it's a facility for the entire division. And my question is regarding transportation, as it's one of the biggest challenges of our division, that we're so large. And while I'm not opposed to this project in any way, I'm wondering of the feasibility of usage from schools at an increased distance from the facility. While there are several schools that can access the facility within 30 minutes of travel, will there be an increased budget for transportation for this facility for schools at a greater distance? Because transportation is a huge concern and a large expense. That's my question.
Okay. Do you want me to respond to that, Madam Chair?
Sure. Yeah, I will just say, if we're talking about like field trips and stuff, when students go on field trips and things like that, whether they're going into Lethbridge or up to Calgary, like to go to the zoo for all these different things, busing is part of the field trip cost, and I assume that it would continue to be. And there is a cost savings of, we've had grade 6 camps or grade 5 camps, and they pay to use different facilities as well as the transportation. But this way, they're not paying for the facility. That's a safe cost. But I'll let you speak to it as far as, will there be a change in budget for these students who are farther away? And maybe you could just speak to how many schools are within 30 minutes driving by bus? Yeah,
no, I mean, certainly Daryl or Richard or Chad can jump in here as well. So just my understanding is this is part of a much bigger discussion, Jocelyn, because if you think about the Crow's Nest Pass, they pay more than any school to go anywhere. You know what I mean? So like if they want to go to Calgary, which they all do, right? They all want to go to Lethbridge, they all want to go to Calgary to certain things. They're paying more money to do that than what the schools in Nanton are doing. And so I'm not discounting your question, because in the past, Currently, it's not in place. In the past, there was some subsidies for schools that might have to travel long distances. Maybe that's a discussion going into the future with regards to the budget. I'm not setting the budget in regards to that at this point in time, but it's part of a larger discussion that needs to be had, and certainly legitimate comment. But it's also legitimate for Crow's Nest Pass, who has to travel longer to go to any other thing as well. So even extracurricular, Crow's Nest Pass typically will have to drive further distances if it's outside the jurisdiction than some of the other places. So Fort McLeod would probably have to drive the least, right? And what does that look like? Clarisholm maybe as well. So I'm not discounting the question at all. I don't have an answer for you at this point in time as it relates to this proposal, because it's a larger conversation that needs to be had in relation to what are the costs associated with what is Crow's Nest Pass paying, what is Pincher Creek paying, what is Fort McLeod paying, Clarisholm, Staveley, those. And so to just identify how this would affect potentially jurisdictions that are further away from it, it's going to cost more, but other schools are paying more to go to other things as well. So again, I guess that's my response, that it's a valid question. I don't have an answer for it at this point.
Is there any other administrators who wanted to add to that at all? Sorry, I'm just scrolling.
I
Yeah,
can
Gerald?
I can jump in a little bit. I think part of this is really about the core value of place-based education. So while the Crow's Nest Pass, the facility and the land out there is one method to achieve the strategies and the outcomes associated with place-based education, it's part of a bigger picture. So yes, kids will go to that site at times throughout the year, but there's also the opportunity and the vision, I guess, for the staff that will be running the programs to go out to all of our schools and help build capacity in their own communities. Because place-based education doesn't just happen in the Crow's Nest Pass, right? It's in all of our school communities. And so these staff positions that are recently hired will go out to each of the schools and work with the schools and with their staff to help them understand how these place-based educational opportunities can be a benefit to students and what can they access in their own communities. So, you know, it's not like the kids in one particular school or community would be going out to that site on a weekly basis or anything like that. It's part of a bigger vision about how do we implement place-based programming in our schools and as a priority in our school division. Hopefully that helps a little bit too.
Thanks. Okay, Jocelyn, did you have any follow-up questions with that, or does that answer kind of give you an idea of what further conversations we're going to need to have about that? Or
I just asked the question because we were specifically speaking about in the jurisdiction, not out, and a Crow's Nest Pass facility. That's all. That's why I asked the question. But thank you.
thank you so much. I'm just looking for any other hands right now. Okay, just so everyone knows, Trustee Toon is just has some low internet flow. So he's here and he can put his hand up and stuff, but he just shut off his camera because he was getting some choppy reception on the other end. We'll let you continue with your presentation, Mr. Perry. You're muted if you are speaking, Mr. Perry.
I was just saying Trustee Gimber had her hand up.
Sorry, must not have seen it. Okay, go ahead, Trustee Gimber, and I'm so sorry. Oh, yours goes in the corner. It's because yours isn't bright yellow. Okay, go ahead, Trustee Gimber. Trustee Gimber, you are still muted.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I want to elaborate a little bit on the question Trustee Stankiewicz posed, because I see this as being transportation within the division and has nothing to do with Crow's Nest Pass students going to Calgary or Lethbridge. So I am still looking for more information on how place-based programming will be in place for communities in the northern part of LRSD if they're not going to be able to use this because transportation costs are not going to be increased.
Thank you, Trustee Gimber. So I'll turn that over to anyone in admin who wants to answer that. And we're specifically talking about place-based learning, that programming and learning that's going to happen at the Crow's Nest Pass facility. If there's northern areas that can't get to the facility because they just don't have it in their budget, then aside from like our 2 new positions, those people coming out to the schools to help implement it, is there other ways that place-based learning can happen for them? I think that's it. Am I getting that? Am I hearing you right, Trustee Gimber?
Yeah, I would like more information, I guess, on
Okay.
the place-based programming that's going to be in place for the northern part of the division.
Perfect. So I'll turn that over to, I'm going to turn it over to Daryl. And if you, just because you know who's best to answer what. So I'll just turn that over to you if you have anything that you want to say about it, or to anyone else who you think has the best answers.
Sure. Maybe I'll just say something briefly, and then Chad is working much more closely with the 2 staff members that have been recently hired to build the programs. But I will just say it is right now, the outcomes and strategies to some degree are outlined in our education plan that the board approved from 21 to 24. So 2021 to 24, so our 3-year education plan has many outcomes and strategies around place-based education. The purchase of this property, the facility enhancements that we're talking about, hiring of the 2 staff members that we have that will work with our schools and with partnerships to build the programs and to develop the course offerings and the different initiatives that could take place. Those have not been finalized yet, and that's why there's a vision for the overall picture. We have some potential partnerships. We have some partnerships already developed and that sort of thing. But a lot of this about what place-based education looks like in each of our communities is something that will be built collaboratively with the staff members that have been hired as they work with the schools. And so it'll depend on what the school's needs are, what expertise our staff members could bring to that discussion, and potential opportunities that could be explored. So it's not something that is set yet, but the vision of this is that, yeah, we're kind of going away from a little bit about the facility to more of a program and a vision, but I understand that they are interconnected and it's part of the overall vision. And so certainly understand the questions, but you know, if you thought about 14 schools that we have, you know, how much time could they spend out there at the Crow's Nest Pass facility? It's not a lot. And so the intent was never that they would be there, like I say, you know, 2 or 3 times a week or on a weekly basis or maybe even on a monthly basis. That was never part of the vision right now. The idea is this will be a site where we can have a lot of different programs with a lot of partnerships, and the kids will have a great experience when they come there. But we want it to be more than that. We really want those staff members to be working with the schools and to capitalize on the place-based educational opportunities that are within their own communities. So part of the desire, I guess, and Chad can maybe speak a little more closely, more fully about the staff members that he's kind of working with and brainstorming ideas about how they will get out to each of the communities and work with the staff there to provide those opportunities in their own communities. Chad, do you have anything else to add there?
It's hard to follow you, sir. That was exactly what I was going to kind of talk about, is that it's that ideology, that pedagogies that we're looking at working with the teachers at each of the schools to leverage place-based learning in their space, in their area. We do have this facility that allows us to expand on a lot of things we're doing divisionally, and people will access that accordingly as best we possibly can. And yes, we'll look for solutions to be able to make sure that we get as many kids that want to be there as possible. But again, FACES is available to everyone. Again, we'll have the place-based coordinators, place-based supervisors, to be able at each school to work with the teacher and the community, directly identify place-based learning that's there. These are things that we're looking at, a different variety of models of what that would look like, to be able to say, okay, I'm from a certain school at a certain location. The teacher contacts our supervisor and said, this is what we're working on. As we leverage also a new curriculum and looking at ways to do that, what does that look like as far as working within the actual school? That's what we're developing right now. This is available to everyone. And yes, we did hear that there's no cost to students to attend the facility. So there is some cost savings that way, but busing isn't an issue. Like for people to be able to travel great distances, it's an issue for everyone right now. But again, the theory and the philosophy behind this is that these supervisors will be working directly with the teachers, the communities, and the students inside the buildings, leveraging place-based learning in their community. But having this facility allows us to do more programming, extra programming, and continue to build around programming. So I hope that answered your question a bit. Some of the stuff we're working on, we're continuously working on this to develop top-notch programming as well too, not just any programming. This is going to be the people we have in place, we believe, will be able to support us in excellent programming for all our kids in our division in different ways.
Thank you. Okay, so I tried to let him move on. Carla, are you feeling okay with that conversation?
I'd like to hear
if
from
I may.
Trustee Long, please.
I had my hand up.
Sorry,
I-
Greg.
No, I think that Chairperson Poitras is trying to ignore me. Thinks I'm speaking too much.
I'm so sorry, Greg. I love your thoughts and ideas. You add so much. Go ahead.
Carla, maybe I can help, I hope. I'm going to try and paraphrase what Mr. Perry said. I think the comment about the distances and the busing is that over a school year of activities that schools do, extracurricular, and of course, they do a different amount of extracurricular, but let's say Crow's Nest Pass did 20 extracurricular trips and Nanton did 20 extracurricular trips, and they all went to the same place at a different time during the year. It would all work out over the year, the school year, at about the same. So you go to Calgary from Nanton and it's a $300 trip. And the Crow's Nest Pass goes to Calgary and it's a $1,200 trip. But then you go out to the lakes and it's $1,200, and Crow's Nest Pass goes out there and it's $300. I think what Mr. Perry was trying to say is that with all the extracurricular activities we do over the year, and of course, again, I'm saying it depends on what activities you're doing, it works out similar for each community, because you do long trips, we do long trips, you do short trips, we do short trips. And so as far as the busing goes and costs, it's going to work out about the same for each community, because we have to go different distances. Did I get that right, Mr. Perry?
Yeah, you're right in what you say, yes.
Thank you, Trustee Long, and I'm sorry that I didn't see you. Thank you, Mr. Perry, for stopping sharing your window for a minute so I can kind of see everyone in the grid view.
Can I just add one or two
Please.
things to that as well?
Yeah, and then Trustee Gimber, if you have any more like follow-up, if you have things that you're like, I hear what you're saying, but this is what I really need, like, please go ahead and jump in. I just want to make sure everyone's cognizant of the time. It is 3 o'clock. So I do think there's one more slide in the presentation, and then, but we can continue this discussion. Please go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, so just 2 points really. First of all, I think it's a valid conversation, but I don't think we have all the information to make a determination as to whether we need to put in place a budget for transportation. I think that needs to be looked at another time. And so it's another conversation. I also think that it's a budget conversation, and we're not in the budget right now in relation to what resources we have to put where. But it is a consideration that you would have during the budget time, right? So that's kind of a conversation that would facilitate discussion during the budget process. Because we're talking about operational dollars that would be used to support transportation, and you'd have to look at all schools. And you know, there might be place-based programming that is at Park Lake, not Park Lake. What's the lake out by Stavely? Can't remember. Cooley, yes. You know, there might be some place-based programming that happens out in that area that other areas of the jurisdiction would want to go to. And so it's all being built at this point. But I think it's worth another conversation, but we don't have all the information to say, yes, we will put a budget line in place to support northern schools in this area without looking at the whole jurisdiction as a whole, I guess is my final comment on that.
Thank you. Trustee Hodges?
Madam Chair, I think we've strayed away from the conversation as to the reason why we are here today. A lot about what we're talking about is programming, and although I want to hear all about this place-based and everything like that, I do feel like this conversation that needs to happen, but it should happen at a different meeting. I think we've strayed away from what we're initially here to approve.
Oh, I wasn't muted. Okay. Thanks, Trustee Hodges. So we are talking, of course, about the motion that's on the table. Sorry, Jeff, can you just clarify for me, do we have one more slide?
Sorry, I was muted that time.
That's okay. I meant Mr. Perry also.
Yeah, I did have one more slide. However, I've identified almost everything that I can answer within the questions that were there. The rest are based on programming, and I'll identify the areas that were on that slide. I just didn't want to keep that slide show up when you couldn't see anybody. FNMI programming was more information in regards to FNMI programming on site. Place-based programming throughout the division. We've heard a little bit about that, but I think there's probably more dialogue that could be had on that. Costs incurred by schools to access place-based. We just recently had a dialogue on that. And accessibility for all students in place-based programming is another conversation that was touched on a little bit at the FACES program, but encouraged to look at how we can ensure accessibility to our programs for all students. Is again, in my opinion, another conversation that could take significant amount of time, but also needs some looking into as well. So those are based on all the questions that I have. I think the information that was provided, through my presentation, other than these programming areas, was what I could answer at the time. And so if there's more questions directly related to something else, then certainly they can ask. But that's all the information I have at this point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perry. So just in response to Trustee Hodges, I see you, Trustee Toon. So just in response to Trustee Hodges, I'm just going to reread the recommendation so we all know what we're voting on. And we do know that information that some of us need to feel comfortable voting on this is different than what others need. So I appreciate your thought, Trustee Hodges, and I appreciate all the other questions that are coming. So the motion that we are discussing today is that the Board of Trustees approve the second and third reading of the Crow's Nest Pass facility proposal as presented. So that is what we're discussing and what we're working towards. So I will let you go ahead, Trustee Toon. I'll just mute myself here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment that I'd like to propose, and I will email it out so that everyone has the wording, but I'll just read it out here. It is that the Board of Trustees approve the second and third reading of the Crow's Nest Pass Facility Project with the proposed budget of $200,000 and further resolve placing the Fort McLeod property for sale through a tender process. And I will send that right away through email to the chair if you.
Yeah, if you send it to Trustee Toon, I'll bring it up. I'll share my screen and bring it up just so
Okay.
everyone can see it in front of you. So for all of us visual people out there. And then just for clarity, we will now only be discussing the amendment. Then we'll vote on it and then we can discuss other things. So if you give me a minute, I'll bring it up. And then while I'm bringing it up, I'll let Trustee speak to the amendment and why he's making that amendment and what the purpose behind it is. It will be up on the screen and then we'll open it up for discussion. And Trustee Long, I will call on you when I see your hand. I'll think about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just let me know when you're ready for me to open.
I will let you go ahead and start speaking to it now while I get it opened. And so I'm just going to open it in my email and then I'll come back and share. So you can go ahead and speak now.
Okay, perfect. First, I just want to thank administration again for coming forward and all the work that they've put into this great facility. I think it's an amazing opportunity. I also want to thank the trustees for coming prepared to the meeting and getting questions ready. I think it's great for us as governors to ask questions and seek out the things that the public's going to be interested in. The reason why I'm bringing this amendment forward is I think it helps clarify some things for the public if they to increase the transparency of it, what we are approving. So adding the budget amount that was in the proposal, I think is one key thing. And then also delineating that the Fort McLeod property is going up for sale through a tender process. All these things are in the proposal, but it eases the depth that the public has to dig through the proposal to find these things. It clearly articulates what our intentions are as a board in approving this process, and I think does so in a transparent way. So that's why I'm bringing forward this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Toon. I just want to make sure you guys can see that on the screen there. Are you guys seeing what I'm sharing that the Board of Trustees approve? Yes? Anyone?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, so I've got it shared there. If everyone feels comfortable with that, then I will come back over here and stop sharing. Perfect. Thank you, Trustee Toon, for speaking to that. I appreciate hearing your thoughts. We will now. Okay, is everything still okay? I don't know what that was. Looked like it wasn't recording anymore. Okay, we'll now open it up to discuss the amendment only. Does anyone have any thoughts around Trustee Toon's amendment? Go ahead, Trustee Hodges.
Sorry, I just wanted to refresh my memory on the price amount. Was that what administration had set forward? Was that the amount that they proposed? So I just was seeking some clarity on that one. I just couldn't remember.
So I'll just speak to that, Madam Chair, if that's okay. Good. Okay. So the proposal itself was not 200,000. We put out the potential amount of 200,000 as an estimate. The proposal itself is to stay within the 2021-22 school year budget. So that would be amending the proposal. The other side of the proposal was to dispose of the property. So that is in line with what the original proposal was. So that's just clarification as to what's going on there.
Okay, so thank you for that. As far as, oh, there we go. Trustee Long, I see you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, it's a question for everybody. is there a reason for putting the $200,000 limit on it at this point? I'm thinking, so if we put the $200,000 limit on it and it turns out it needs to be $220,000, does that mean that we can't go ahead and complete the project because we put a cap on it? Does this amendment put us in a position where we would not be able to go over the cap in any way?
Thank you, Trustee Long. Trustee Hodges, is your hand still up or is it up again?
It was up again, but Greg just asked my question, so I was just going to lower it.
Perfect, thank you. Trustee Toon, I see your hand up, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so I will speak on the intent of the amendment. The intent wasn't to deter the project from going forward. And I think it's really telling that we as trustees aren't really sure what the exact amount was going to be. And now it's being said that it's as long as it fits in the budget. And that wasn't what my understanding was from the first meeting. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, because that means it could be anything within the budget. That means any extra additional resource dollars are going into this project, potentially. So that's where I struggle with this. If it was originally planned to be 200,000 and then it ends up being 220, there's contingencies involved. All those things can be within scope, but it might take another conversation to come back and have an approval for the additional funds. I think that speaks to the transparency aspect of it. If we're just going to approve a blank check and say whatever extra resources can be found within this budget, approve that the facility could double, could triple, any money not spent on IMR or any other thing that has already been allocated could go into this potential project. So if the amount isn't correct, if the $200,000 isn't correct, I think we should address that. If it's actually $250,000 or whatever it be, I would ask that we address that and not say that there is no amount, because for transparency's sake, like there has to be some type of cap. We can't just have a blank check, so to speak, motion saying as long as it fits within this budget. That's my thoughts on it. Thank you.
You're muted, Lacey.
Yeah, you're muted.
Wow. Okay. I was really visiting with you guys there for a minute. Sorry, it's hard for me to know what order to go in here as we I have to scroll along the bottom. So thank you, Trustee Toon. Trustee Long, you're not next, but can you let me know if your hand is still up or if it's up again?
My hand is still up and I was next.
You are not.
I appreciate those comments by Trustee Toon very much. I'd like to hear from Mr. Perry before I speak, please.
Okay, thank you. And then we also have Trustee Yagos. Also, yeah, Trustee Gimber has to leave in 10 minutes. So we'll go to Trustee Perry and then we'll, yeah, I'll just, not Trustee Perry, you're not a trustee. You're very nice, but you're not a trustee. Sorry about that. So Mr. Perry, I'll let you respond back to that. And then we'll see where we're at. We need to let Trustee Gimber speak as well. So let's go to Mr. Perry first.
Yeah, just a clarification, like not all funds are available to be expended in capital projects. IMR is not available for these types of projects, but it does, what the motion originally indicated was that we would be within the budget. So Trustee Toon is correct, but the reason why we put the $200,000 out there was to identify what we anticipate the cost being. It would be very unlikely that we would spend significantly more dollars than what the estimate is that we put out there without coming back to the board and providing that information. So it just gives us the flexibility to use the resources that we have available in the time frame that we have available. And so, but in all clarity, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that IMR dollars are not available, which tend to be a lot of funds that we have available to us.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Trustee Yagos, do you have a question in regards to the amendment or a comment?
Yes, I do. I think Mr. Perry has answered the proposed $200,000 budget, that if it is over that, because I was just thinking at that part, if we could put it $200,000 to $250,000 or $230,000, but we can just, his answers helps me, because if it is over that, he said he'll come back to the board. And my second question is that we're placing the Fort McLeod property for sale. Is that, I mean, I know this is one of the things to do, but is that not, I'm sorry, putting the, changing the motion a whole lot? Should that
Yes,
not maybe be a whole nother motion? I just want to know that as a part
okay. So sorry, Trustee Gimber, we need to get to the end of the amendment, because we have to get to the end of the amendment and vote on it before anything else can happen with the original motion. So yeah, and Trustee or Mr. Perry, if you want to answer that.
Sorry, I'm not sure what the question was.
Sorry, I thought you had your hand up because you wanted to speak to it. So Trustee Yagos was just wondering if it goes above and beyond the $200,000, that you would then bring it back to us. I did want to just say, I remember from our last conversation, my concern with putting a number on it is that then everyone knows our top dollar. So if it's like, well, 200,000 might not be enough and we need to amend that and we make it 250,000. Well, we may have been able to build it for 230, but because they know that the board's approved 250,000, they're going to make it 250,000. Just the same as if we put 200,000 and we could have got it for 180, then they're going to make it 200,000, right? So when you let people know, you don't go into a car dealership to buy a car and say, hey, I'd like to get that car for 80,000. I do have 100,000 to spend, but like I've been approved for that much, but can you give it to me for 80? I remember that being part of the conversation. And so I just wanted to add that as something I'd like to add to the conversation. Oh, and then Trustee Yagos was wondering if adding and further resolve placing the Fort McLeod property for sale through a tender process, does that change the intent of the motion? Should that be a separate and different motion? Trustee Toon, I'll let you go ahead and speak to that.
Yes, I don't believe it changes the intent, because that was in the proposal, was to use the sale from the Fort McLeod property in the proposal. And I think this is a transparent way to do it. We've talked about this in disposing of other property, and this is typically something in the past that has to come to a board for approval as a sale of assets of that amount. Yeah, if it falls over a certain amount, it's legislation how it is disposed. So I think that this process kind of clarifies that that's the intent of the board to do this, and it wasn't in the proposal that we previously saw.
Thank you, Trustee Toon. Trustee Long?
Yeah, I agree with Trustee Toon. I think these can both be in the same amendment. I would comment about the $200,000 figure. I also appreciate Trustee Toon's comment that for the sake of transparency, that we should have put an amount in there. And of course, if it's more than that, we can return to this. And if we have to increase it, that would be something we would discuss later. So saying that, is Mr. Perry comfortable with the proposed budget of 200,000, or would Mr. Perry think it should be a little bit more than that? Like if we have to lift that figure a little bit or stay at 200,000? I want to know what Mr. Perry's comfortable with.
Honestly, Trustee Long, I don't know what the cost is going to be. We haven't had the process go out to tender and have a discussion with a contractor or the architects in relation to the costs. We know that costs continue to rise as of December. Our architects indicated that costs have risen 20+% in the market. So the flexibility is that we don't know what the costs are going to be. And so, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
Thank
but,
you.
but would you think that this is a good basis? This number, would this be a basis for us, a comfortable basis? Or
Trustee
you don't
Long,
want to answer that at all?
no, I don't have enough information with regards to the market and where it's at to understand whether setting a $200,000 threshold would be appropriate or not.
Understand.
Thank you. I just wanted to add too that for me personally, I think it does change the intent because not necessarily that it changes the intent because we would like to use those dollars from the property sale, but it's a totally separate motion saying that you want to sell it through tender when the wording here does not connect the two. It doesn't say that be it resolved that we're going to place the Fort Macleod property for sale through tender and use those dollars. Because we could put it for sale through tender and it could sit there for 5 years. It could sit there for 2 days. It could sit there so it is totally separate in my mind. That is what admin has said they would like to do, is sell it and use those dollars, but they're not connected. They won't necessarily be connected because there's nothing in this motion amendment saying if it doesn't sell, you can't do it. Or if it does sell, then you can do it. Or if it sells for 90,000, you can do it for this much. If it sells for 300,000, then you can add that extra to your budget. Like, they're different to me. Even though the funds, we would like to use the funds from the sale for that purpose. If it doesn't happen, that like these aren't connected in here. It's not saying be it resolved that we sell it through tender for this purpose or with this, they're not interconnected. Although the intent is that they would be. This doesn't make that so. So for that reason, I would vote against the amendment because I see them as separate things. Trustee Stankiewicz. And then Trustee Gimber has her hand up. She needs to speak. So
I lowered my hand. Please
okay.
go ahead, Amber.
So Trustee Gimber.
I'd like to hear from Trustee Toon before I comment,
Okay.
please.
Thank you. Trustee Toon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to clarify, you mentioned why you're voting against the motion, and we're still in debate, and then you're chairing this, or
Sorry,
you're saying
no,
it. You're,
sorry. What
sorry,
I'm saying.
sorry, just 1
Go
second. You are saying it is out of order, and this is a substantial change to the motion, and so you're asking that portion be taken out.
Yeah, sorry, I should have been more clear on that. So I was saying, for me, as we're sitting here and debating it and thinking about it and talking about it, it seems to me like those would be two separate things. And so I'm asking, or I was trying to ask, I should have said it, is to me, they seem like two different things. So I would ask if they could be two separate motions, even though we know that we want them to be like that they do have ties and responses to each other. I see them as two separate motions. And so could we separate them? Would you consider it friendly to separate them from each other so that if someone feels like they're supporting one part of it and not the other, that they wouldn't have to vote against the entire amendment because those two.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Sorry, thank you for clarifying that. I don't want to be argumentative, but I don't think you can separate the two because the funds that are used for the Fort Macleod project sale, I know you've said that we can't control when and if it sells, but those were explicitly stated that those are the funds that are getting used to fund the project. So that was the proposal. So to take it out and say we approve the building of the Fort Macleod project without saying that you approve the sale, it's putting the cart before the horse. It can happen at any time. They can move ahead with building this without having the Fort Macleod project property sold, but you can't say that you support the building, but you don't support the sale through a tendered process of that. And this doesn't, in my mind, this doesn't finalize the thing. We'd still have the sale of the property. We'd still, as a board, approve that once admin got written agreements to purchase through the tender process, just like any other tender process that we've done in the past. it would come through the board for approval saying, we've received this, this is the amount, and this is what, and it confidentially would get more information in camera, land, legal, and labor, like everything else, and it would get approved. So that's my thoughts. You can't separate them out because they're intertwined.
Thanks, Trustee Toon. So just off of what you're saying, it sounds to me like maybe we had a different understanding. And so for my clarity, you're saying that it be sold through tender, and regardless of when that happens, whether it is in 5 years or 5 days, that money then would go towards this project. But if it doesn't sell right away, that doesn't mean that the project waits until it sells. Okay, that wasn't my understanding. So thank you for clarifying that. Mr. Perry, I'll let you add to that, and then we'll go back to Trustee Gimber.
I just listening to the discussion, I wonder, and obviously I can't make amendments to the amendment or whatever, but I think the wording for sell through a tender process, I think should be placing the Fort McLeod property for sale and go through a tender process. Because what ends up happening at the end of the day, if we get lowballed on the tenders, so let's say the value of the property is worth 100,000, they give us the highest bid is 800,000. We've gone through a tender process, but we now have the ability to sell it at fair market rate. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Just making sure the wording is, because if you say sell through a tender process, potentially is different than going through a tender process, which of course we would, but at the end of the day, if you get a low ball, you're not going to accept that through the tender process.
Hey, thank you, thank you, Mr. Perry. If any trustees feel that there's merit to that, then you are free to make that amendment. You can go ahead and make your amendment, which would be an amendment to the amendment. Sorry, you guys, it's hard for me to go from screen to screen because I'm sharing my screen. I do see Trustee Toon, I see Trustee Stangiewicz, and I see Trustee Long. If you think you were, yeah.
I would let Trustee Toon, since he made the amendment and Mr. Perry has spoken, I would let him go next.
Go ahead, Trustee Toon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was the intent.
Trustee Toon, just so everyone knows, Trustee Gimber has just switched to her headphones, so she is able to stay with us for a little bit longer. Please continue.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the intent of the motion, to not say that it was a binding sale of that's why it said by placing the Fort McLeod property, not selling the property. That was my intent with the wording. If Mr. Perry's wording is better received to the board, that's why I think placing the property for sale through a tender process doesn't mean that it has to sell. It's like putting your house on the market. If nobody's willing to buy what you make a reasonable offer, we don't have to sell it, and that's what the intent. But everything would get reported back to the board through this type of a motion.
Yeah, I think if that's the intent and everybody understands the intent from this dialogue, then there's no need to change.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go to Trustee Stangiewicz and then Trustee Long.
I support the intent and the wording of this motion going forward for accountability and transparency.
Okay, we'll go to Trustee Long then.
Yeah, and just to further support Trustee Toon on this, if we separated this into two motions, you stand probably not, but there is the possibility that the board would support the proposed budget of 200,000 and then a vote against McLeod property for sale and through a tender process. I wouldn't want that to happen. So I don't think we should separate them.
Thank you, Trustee Long, for sharing that. Trustee Hodges?
Sorry, I don't have anything.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Trustee Gimber. I know you're in the car. Are you able to speak now or not at this moment? If you can't unmute, that's totally fine.
I'm good now. Just carry on. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Yagos, could we hear your thoughts on this?
At this point, having with the discussion and that just hopefully when whoever reads this has the first has the same understanding as that we have been presented with our discussion.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just looking here. Is there any other hands up to discuss the amendment? Okay, I would like to add something. I always try and wait till the end as board chair. My one question, I guess, or concern with adding a dollar amount. First of all, I want to say that I really, in our division, we are very fiscally responsible, and I trust our administrators to stay within that budget. But if there is no set budget, then what is that, right? I trust them to be fiscally responsible. I do worry about putting a number on it because, like I spoke to earlier, then people kind of know where our top is. Should we make it a bigger number than 200,000, you know, because we're unsure if it will be more expensive or won't, especially in such an unstable climate when it is hard to get a hold of lumber and prices are fluctuating so much. I would hate to have this facility not be done because we're waiting to come get approval for an extra $20,000 or something like that. So I guess my question for clarity is, if it's going to be above budget, if it's proposed 200,000 and it looks like it is going to be 200,000, and then they start the process and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's going to be more, does everything stop? And then they come to us and get approval for more, or does it continue on even though we don't have a meeting for 3 weeks and then they come and get approval then? How does that process, what does that process look like? Is there potential for it to slow down the process of building? So then it might not be done. You know, we are approaching this process with time in mind. So just that's my question. I'll go to Trustee Toon and then Trustee Long.
I can just close whenever on the amendment, whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
I'll go to Trustee Long then.
We could have an emergent meeting like we're having right now if it was going to go over the $200,000 set budget.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we can always have an emergency special meeting. Got it. Forgot. Okay, I am going to just give us a 10-second pause here so I can let everyone kind of marinate this in your mind and see if there's any more questions specifically about the amendment. Then we'll have Trustee Toon close and we will be voting on if we want to keep the amendment or go back to the original motion. So I'm just going to give you a 10-second here. If you have a question in that 10 seconds or come up with one, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll let Trustee Toon close. Okay, Trustee Toon, I'm going to let you go ahead and close on the amendment and then we'll call the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's been great discussion about the amendment. I think this has really helped clarify and for various trustees what the intent of what the presentation was and what the proposal was given to us. I think this will do the same for the public. I think that I'm not fearful of the $200,000 being out there. It was in the public meeting and stated as the number in public. So any contractor, anyone who's interested in would be watching the video or seeing it online or reading the newspaper. So we don't need to be fearful of the amount being out there. We need to continue to be good governors and accountable to the public. So I think that this motion does that. And so I'd ask you to vote in favor of the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have the amendment on the floor made by Trustee Toon, and the amendment to the motion reads that the Board of Trustees approve the second and third reading of the Crow's Nest Pass Facility Project with the proposed budget of $200,000, and further resolve placing the Fort McLeod property for sale through a tender process. We are voting on the amendment, not the actual motion. Trustee Gimber, if you want to verbally vote, you can go ahead and do that. Go ahead, Trustee Toon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Point of order, I'd ask for a recorded vote on the amendment
Sure.
and then, yeah, sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. Thank you. So we are going to have this be a recorded vote. So I will call the question, and Trustee Gimber, if you can unmute to just let us know if you're in favor of the amendment or not. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And I'm going to say, all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand.
I am in favor.
Okay, so I'm going to record all trustees in favor, and that is passed. Thank you very much, you guys. I appreciate the discussion. So are you guys, do you want the new wording of the motion? Do you want me to bring it back up on screen? Are you guys okay? Okay, I'll leave it for now. Trustee Gimber, I'll go to you.
You know, I was thinking about asking to table this motion because I don't feel that the questions that I asked have been answered. There was a good presentation today, but to be completely frank and honest, even when I get the answers to most of those questions, which I will still be following up, my vote will still be the same on this motion. I think it's incredibly important for our division and our students. So at this point, I have nothing further that I'd like to ask. I'm prepared to vote.
You're muted, Lacey.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Gimber. Sorry, now we have kids showing up. Okay, sorry about that. So Trustee Gimber, are you calling the question, or are you just saying that you personally are ready to vote?
No, I'm going to go ahead and call the question on this.
Okay. So Trustee Gimber is calling the question on the motion. Just to be clear, as chair to all the trustees, when somebody calls the question, all conversation ceases and we just go ahead and vote. Is that correct? Can someone verify for me that that's correct? Thumbs up if everyone agrees to that. Okay. Really don't want to chair something inappropriately again. So go ahead, Trustee Toon.
Yeah, as long as nobody is opposed to calling the question, but I would just ask for, again, a recorded vote before the vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I'll just ask, is there anyone who will show by raise of hand that they are opposed to calling the question at this time? Okay, so we are going to have a recorded vote. I will read the motion to you. I'm just going to bring it up here again. Sorry. Let me grab it here. So it is that the Board of Trustees approve the second and third reading of the Crow's Nest Pass facility project with the proposed budget of $200,000 and further resolve placing the Fort McLeod property for sale through a tender process. We're going with a recorded vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. So we have Trustee Gimber, are you in favor or not?
I am in favor.
Okay, so we have all trustees, including myself, in favor. That's a recorded vote. Perfect. Thank you guys so much, and I appreciate the discussion. I'm just making sure I got the recorded vote part down. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will move on now to discussion information items, which is E1, the admin procedure 541, naming of
Excuse me,
schools.
Madam Chair.
Yep, sorry. Go ahead.
Trustee Hodges has her hand up.
I thought she just had it up from before, but please go ahead, Trustee Hodges. Thank you. Chair, what is it? Vice Chair? I was like assistant chair.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Vice Chair. Trustee Hodges, please go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a question, and I just didn't know if it was an appropriate time to ask it or not. So I can definitely wait.
Is it about that motion?
No, it just had to touch on what Trustee Gimber said, and so I just wanted to just
Go ahead. Now's an
Okay.
appropriate time.
Okay, I just wanted to support what you said and about wanting to know more knowledge going forward on the programming and everything like that. And I just would really love for us as a board to be able to sit down and have that great discussion.
Perfect. Thank you. So with that being said, then we will go on to Greg. Please just yell at me if someone else raises their hand. Discussion item E1, admin procedure 541, naming of schools. Mr. Jeff Perry, Associate Superintendent Business Services, will provide the board with information as to the naming process outlined in the Administrative Procedure 541, naming of schools, as it relates to the Crow's Nest Pass property. So I'll go ahead and turn that over to you, Mr. Perry.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I didn't actually realize that my video was off. When you share your screen, I think it turned your video off, and I didn't realize I was off. I kept reading my name, but I didn't realize that was meaning that you can see me, so I apologize for that. Okay, certainly. So as part of the package, you received a couple documents, I believe. Can you confirm that? And so I don't have to go through it in detail. Okay. Okay, so the two documents that you received, one was the admin procedure, that 541. And so then there was a draft process for naming the Livingston Range School Division's Crow's Nest Pass property. And so that gave a detail with regards to process that we would be taking. And I think it's important to clarify that at this point, what we're seeking to do is to name the site. So the property, the entire property, each individual facility at this point will have the potential of having other opportunities, whether it be corporate sponsors and things of that nature. But at this point, we're talking about naming the entire site and going through a process for that. So I think it's important to identify that through the admin procedure 541, that the division believes that the community should have opportunity to participate in the naming of this says new facility, but in this case, we're talking about the site in general. And so it also, the draft also references the admin procedure 541 and believing that there's certain components that could be part of the name, and this is something that would have to be communicated out to community as we provide them an opportunity to provide feedback and input into a name. So I won't go through those details. I'm sure you've read them in the admin procedure. There is the potential in the future of corporate sponsors and things of that nature for other facilities, like I indicated. But if you are following along, there's a chart there that talks about a timeline, and I'll just go through that timeline real quick with regard to what we're looking at. It talks about the phases, the commencement, where senior administration would have a discussion, and this is a proposal that's being brought back to the board for the timing and the process to go through. So we're obviously still in February, but that's going to end real quickly, and we'll be moving into March. The second component of that is to invite LRSD stakeholder input through a Google form or website form from February 28th to March 14th. So that would be a 2-week time period. Communication would be put out by our coordinator of communications. We'd provide also, as part of that process, an open house out at the site on with a tentative date of March 10th. So the evening of March 10th, where we would allow anybody that would like to come. And I think we've talked about a potential, I won't commit to this, but a virtual tour or something of that nature as well for those that might not be able to make that trip out there. Leadership getting into March, we will get the feedback from the input from the stakeholders, and a committee consisting of senior admin, communications, pursuits, place-based staff, etc., discusses the stakeholder input, and senior admin shares a recommended facility name with the trustees for potential approval on March 22nd. And that would be an approval in principle if the board determined that that would be appropriate. At that time, we'd have the ability to select a date for our grand opening in September and do some other things such as look into creating a promotional packages and things of that nature. So a month later, we would take any feedback that we receive from advertising. That advertising specifically identifies who to contact and where to put that provide that information if they have feedback on the proposed name. And we would bring that to the April 26th board meeting for deliberation and potential final approval with the board. Beyond that, there would be a public announcement in April of 2022. We would work on signage and branding, production for that. We would finalize preparations for the grand opening in September, where we would invite the Minister of Education and other dignitaries, such as our MLA, who was very influential in helping us get the site, as well as local leaders, the municipality of Crowsnest Pass, who also wrote a letter of support for us, and so forth. So that's obviously not there's a greater list than that. Those are just some of the examples of people that we would include in that. And then after the process, after we've had the grand opening, we would debrief in regards to how the process went and what that looks like. So that's, you know, given the fact that you had the documents in advance and had the ability to go through them, that's a brief overview of the timeline, the proposal, and what we're looking at. So I would open it up to, I don't know if other senior management have comments or questions. If not, then questions from the board, Madam Chair.
Discussion item that we're having at this time, discussing the process. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Discussing the process and moving forward. So I'll go to senior admin first. Are there any senior admin who would like to add to this? Okay. Is there any questions at this time on that presentation and the process moving forward from any trustees? Everyone looks good. Okay, great. So, sorry, I'm just going back to my meeting agenda here. So if there's no further questions on E1, then we'll just accept that as information, and we appreciate that, Mr. Perry. And at this time, I will ask for someone to make a motion that we go in camera at 3:50. Trustee Stankiewicz makes the motion that we move in camera at 3:50. At this time, we will also stop recording. So go ahead and do that.